I think there's something important to point out of you filming the 10 videos but not putting them out.
Dude, huge.
What a lot of people are in that place right now of being scared of the judgment or scared of
it was me writing all those drafts, all those books, and never putting them out too.
Yeah. What is that? And how do you get over that?
I think that identity, how I look at identity is it's two things. It's your story, the story that you live through, right? I call that the frame. So like you have a frame of reference or a frame that you're living out. So that's the story, but also it's the standards. And the standard is what you're most committed to. And the key part about like when you start fully like going towards your future self or living as your future self is not only the first part, which is mental creation. That's the imagination part, thinking about your future self, whether it's that, running a company or whatever you want to be doing, seeing it. But the second part, which is most important, is getting so emotionally convicted about it. You got to get so emotionally convicted about it that like, that's when it becomes a standard, because goals are not that powerful. They are powerful, but when it becomes a standard, it becomes the filter through which you make your decisions now. And so that's really what you want to do, is you want your future to determine what you're doing in the present. And so what you want to do is you want to get so emotionally excited about it and committed to it that you stop worrying about what people think about it. You stop worrying about the failure along the way. You stop worrying about what it's going to take to get there. It's like when the why is strong enough, you'll find the how, and you'll find the who. And so you've got to get not only mentally clear on the vision, but emotionally, like it's got to become really important to you. That's like the why part. Like it's got to really matter so much that it almost, and there's a lot of research on this too. Like a lot of people, they put way more stock into the emotions of their current self and they actually downplay the emotions of their future self. But if you can get hyper, really excited and emotionally committed to your future self, it actually allows you to be a lot more flexible in the present, and your current emotions become a lot less like controlling. And that's really where psychological flexibility kicks in, is that, yeah, you might be scared. You might not know the answers. There might be a lot of uncertainty. You might even bomb, like a lot of things. I bombed a lot of blog posts, like bombed that book launch of my first book and was depressed for months. It's okay though. Like that's part of mastering your past as well, is that you transform every experience into benefits, into growth. And so I just think get super emotionally committed to your future self. You can always update it, always reframe it, but then it allows you to be very, very chill in the present, very flexible, and you can just start moving forward and learning.
This is such a difficult thing for me when I was going through your work, and when I think about just life in general. It's difficult because we are making decisions right now for a future self of ours whose goals and aspirations are different.
Yes.
And how do we reconcile that? How do we make good decisions when the 38-year-old version of me is so different and doesn't care about this podcast nearly as much as I care about it today, and cares about his children and cares about his wife, but I don't know my children. I don't know my wife. They don't exist yet. So how can I make decisions for them? How can I make decisions for myself when maybe even at that time I'm divorced or, something crazy? I hope not. But it's just like there's so many different versions of reality.
Sure. And
we don't know what ourselves are going to be like. So how do we make decisions for ourselves?
Well, I guess I'll ask you the question: How did the past version of you get here? Like, so call it 3 or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When that version of you was thinking about their future self, and obviously their picture of you is not exactly how things went, but how did that person make those decisions?
I looked to the past. I said, what was true when I was a child? Oh, I really liked reading. I really liked reading about growth and personal mindset and entrepreneurship and psychology. Okay, I still like that today. If I liked that when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and I like that now, there's a good chance I'm probably going to like that in 15 years as well. I don't know if that is 100% true, but that was my best predictor for what I would enjoy 3 years from the time that I started the podcast.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I love that. I think that it's good to have kind of your best bet. So like I look at the past and I look at the future as a draft, right? So it's like it's like the draft of an email or the draft of like you're write a speech, rip it, you can rewrite it. You know what I mean? And so it's a draft, but you still want to have something that you're operating off of, because that ends up being the filter for what you say yes and no to now. And so it's your best bet, but it's your best draft, but in the near future, it might change. You might have new information that totally blows that all away. And that's part of flexibility as well, is setting a new goal. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do. because then you don't have to be hooked on the assumptions of your past self. Just because your past self thought that was a good idea, you might have better information or totally shifted priorities based on either experiences you've had or just new information. And so I just think becoming willing and aware of that. I also think bring the goal shorter, right? So like your 3-year future self, who you are in 3 years from now, you can blow that up and think in major, really cool ways. You can stretch it out and have it seem impossible to you, which I genuinely think you should go for things that are impossible. But 3 years out isn't too far away. Things can look very different in your life. You can even have totally different views of the world, but you're close enough to that you can be pretty clear on what matters to you then. And you get to create your future self, by the way. You get to create your future self. And so if I think about where I want to be in 3 years, I can imagine it. I can think, where do I really want to be? My kids are going to be 3 years older. I do want to keep writing books. I want those books to be better, but I also want it. And so I don't think it has to be that difficult. Along the way, you keep learning, you keep growing, and it's okay to change your mind too.
Yeah. Well, it's always cool to reflect back on where you were at one point and see how far you've come. So I pulled up a January 2nd, 2016 journal entry that you wrote. And you said, "The clock doesn't stop. Only I do. I can't deny my excitement and anticipation for 2016. There is, without question, big stuff on the horizon. Hundreds of thousands of subscribers, well over $200,000, a book deal, weekly fasting on Sundays, and lots of prayers and journaling." I mean, that's pretty incredible when you look back at it, don't you think?
I don't even know where you found that, because I didn't even know that still exists. Is that an old Medium article or something?
Yeah, it's online.
That's
I wouldn't
cool.
pull that up if...
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, but journaling is such an important practice, but particularly in the way of forecasting where you're going to go, because if you can do that, then you can have a sense for, okay, I'm January 2nd, 2017. Did this actually map to be true? Was this crazier than I imagined? Was this less than I imagined? And it gives you a good sense for where you're predicting you're going to go, because we're so often such poor predictors of our futures.
Yeah. I think that journaling is such a powerful tool it's a tool for me for clarity, right? It's a tool for me for functioning. So a lot of times people use a journal to document their history. For me, I use it for reframing and for refiltering my past, learning from my past, but also getting really clear on my future. And your attention, where you place your attention, really, really matters. What you focus on, you create more of. And so for me, journaling is a place to think about my future, to strategize about my future, to write it down. I mean, that was a point in time when I was very aggressive towards my goal of becoming a professional author, right? And so I like that I honestly made it public, because I was obviously not worried about what other people thought about me at that point in time, which to me showed me I was more committed to my future self than my present self, more committed to my future self than other people's opinions of my work. And so I like hearing that former version of myself and just seeing where they were at. So what ended up happening was, certainly not all of those goals were achieved in 2016. By the end of 2016, so I guess I was writing that sometime end of 2015, thought I would have hundreds of thousands of email subscribers, X amount of money. A lot of those goals didn't happen in that year. Now that I'm just honestly looking back at it for the first time hearing this, I ended up getting to about 100,000 email subscribers by the end of 2017 or end of 2016. And it was in January of 2017 that I negotiated the book deal for my first book. I did get help from Ryan Holiday and others on the book proposal and stuff. That was probably my major goal. It wasn't probably till 2017 or even 2018 that I started actually making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
But that was what I was going for. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of cool to just kind of see how it all worked out.
Yeah. What was that like? So I want to talk to you about two different things on that front.
Sure.
First is John Morrow's $197 headline course.
Yep.
Was you did it for 10 minutes and then you're like, I know what I need to do. And you just went. So you invested in yourself.
Sure.
And then with Ryan Holiday, you bought coaching with him to help him with the book proposal. So how has investing in yourself, particularly early on in your journey, helped you pay incredible dividends?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a massive goal, a massive filter, it's a lot easier to utilize the help of other people, especially if you're someone who again, is more committed to your future self than your present self. A lot of times people are worried about, call it, making an investment in themselves, whether that's buying an online course, whether that's paying a decent amount of money for, whether it be coaching or some form of direct help. Getting direct help is different from just listening to a podcast. It's very awesome. Like I'm a deep studier of podcasts, but when you buy someone's time and they're someone you respect, then you're like, and so you have to be the kind of person where even like you can't depend on them to get you the result. Like I know that even if, call it, I hire Ryan back in the day and it doesn't go well, like I'm not going to blame him for that. Like I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to just get the most out of it. And so you just have to have that growth mindset that you're going to turn it into something massively huge no matter what. Like even if it's knowing what not to do. It's just kind of having that internal locus of control. And there's an internal locus of control or external locus of control. External is you let outside forces, dictate what you do. Whereas internal, it's like, I'm going to use this no matter what. I'm making this choice and I'm going to use it. And so, yeah, I was extremely committed to learning how to blog in a very powerful way. That was the best resource I could find. The John Morrow thing. Went through like three or four modules and I was like, done. I started just riffing, just ripping it. And, I never even went back. I've actually been thinking about going back to that course, just honestly, just to like get better at writing. But yeah, so I just think you got to bet on yourself, obviously, at different levels, and just know that whatever's going to happen, you are going to turn into something good. Even if things don't go how you thought that they would, you're going to turn it into something awesome. And I just think generally having that mindset helps.
Well, this also circles back to what we were talking about at the start of the conversation, which you want to turn your mentors into friends. In some sense, support them. How do you support them? You buy what they're putting out into the world.
I also supported Ryan in a huge way because I became a massive blogger on Medium, and I ended up managing his Medium account for like a year and a half and getting him tens and thousands of emails that he didn't have to do anything. Like we just did it for him because I wanted to help him back then. And so, yeah, I just think trying to find ways where you can support the people that you want to develop relationships with in the way that you actually can. Don't try to support them in a way where you don't have like a skill set. But if you've got a skill set, or if you've got some form of like leverage, an audience, or it's often worth it to do that. You won't always get something in return, and you shouldn't always expect that you'll get something in return. Sometimes people won't appreciate it. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes it won't further the relationship. That's okay. Like I just think if there's certain people that you really resonate with and want to get connected to, if you can help them in powerful ways, it sometimes doesn't have to take a lot of your time, but it can potentially make a big upside for them or a big result for them. It's usually pretty wise to do it. I think over time you get better and better at filtering. You get better and better at, I think it's still good to be generous. It's still very good to be thoughtful, but especially when you're just starting, like you've got more time. And you've got more energy, more excitement, and over time you do get more and more thoughtful about the types of people you really want to like do a bigger impact for. Like I think in the past I made a broad impact for a lot of people, and now I'd rather make a super deep impact for a few people.
Is that for readers of your
I think it's just in general the types of relationships I want to create. It's more about deep than shallow. I still, want to impact lots of people with my writing. But I'm just thinking in terms of like relationships and even just in general, just, who do you, so as an example, like one of the things I learned writing the trilogy with Dan Sullivan is like, it made me think like, I don't want to just do like one-off books. Like if I end up doing even just a series myself, like I want to go. Like, have you read any of Nassim Taleb's books?
Of course.
So, like,
amazing.
He did, like, his, like, 4-part Incierto, right? And it's, like, he went deep on, like, a set of ideas for, like, a decade, right? And so it's, like, that's now how I think, is, like, rather than just doing one thing here and then one thing over here and one thing over here and one thing over here, it's, like, what's something I can just freaking go deep on? And if it's going to be with someone, like, I don't want to just do, like, a one-off project. It's, like, how can I help them for, like, 3 or 4 years and, like, do something that's to the moon? And if I'm going to do something to myself, what's my own version of the Inserto? Like, what's my own thing that I just, so I think that's just more how I think now is rather than, whereas more the blogger version of me was kind of happy to like be more broad, where it's like, now I'm cool, like going deep into this for years. And I want to freaking own this thing.
Well, this is interesting because it relates to Ryan Holiday as well, because Ryan Holiday has this series, and it also goes to 10x's.
Your ambitions get a lot bigger.
Yeah, in order to 10x, you often have to go deeper.
That is how.
And it is very difficult when you're staying at the surface level to really make the 10x, the impact 10x, your own understanding. And what I'm curious about though is the 10x. How do you 10x things that are difficult to measure? How do you 10x more love? How do you 10x more kindness? How do you 10x more giving how do you 10x more presence? These are things that I was curious about.
Yeah. I think I look at things very holistically, right? And so I look at who I am as a person. I don't have to, I think it's nice to make things semi-measurable, although you can't. Like, that's what even a psychologist does, is they try to measure love. It's like, and so obviously these things are qualitative, but you can actually, and I actually think that the real 10x is qualitative. What is the quality difference, right? Like, what is the difference in this thing versus what it was before? So if I was to look at my relationship with my wife, it's like, what is the difference in quality? Like, of what it is versus where I was before, the depth of our relationship, the depth of our conversations, how much enjoyment we have together, like how much sense of accomplishment or sense of purpose. And if we actually think about where we're at in our life, and even if I just think about the conversation I had with her, on my way here to spend some time with you, I'm like, how does that conversation in our relationship compare to where it was 3 or 4 years ago? I could write down tons of different bullet points, and those are ways I can measure the difference of a qualitative relationship. I can see it, but I also can define it, and that's a really important, I think, factor. It's an important thing, is rather than being defined by the past, you obviously want to define it, right? And so I get to define how my relationship with my wife is different. No one else really can, because it's my relationship with her. She also has a relationship with me, but she would be the one to define that. And obviously we can define things together. So I think you largely get to define what the difference is. And that's actually what you do to create your past. That's how you reframe it. That's how you refilter it, is I can define how I'm different from who I was last week. I get to look at it. I can think about how do I see the world differently than I did a week ago? What choices are now available to me that weren't even on my past self's radar even a week ago. And by actually framing my past that way, and by filtering for that, I'm looking for the ways I'm different from my past self. I am now creating the ways I'm different from my past self. That's really what memory is. Memory is a recreation more than a retrieval. You always reconstruct the past from the present, but you do it from a perspective. You do it from an angle. And so I think when you're doing it with qualitative things, you're defining the quality difference. It's like when you eat 2 different types of foods, you say this one's better than that. Well, why? Then you start to define the differences, right? You're creating the differences, and you're defining the differences in quality.
If you enjoyed this clip, watch the full episode right over here, and don't forget to subscribe.